I'm in a very weird position, but it's because I'm going to be putting books up on the screen because I'm a lazy ass bitch and all my books are in the car. Hey friends, what is up and welcome back to my channel. As you can tell from the title of today's video, we're going to be talking about what I read over the last week. Now, I'm in a very loving mood right now. It is the holiday season. It is, I don't know, just like the time of giving and you know, all that cute shit. So I read a lot of romance. I read one smutty book, like very smutty, and then one definitely romance book. If you saw my Bake Crate unboxing, you will have seen one of these books that I'm about to talk about, and people were asking me to talk about what I thought of them when I read them, because I've been trying to read books as I get them in subscription boxes and trying to make my way through the books that I have. You can't see it, but I have two other shelves, like full shelves full of books, half of which I have not read, so I need to get around to that. I've been trying to avoid going to the library and things like that, trying to really cut down on it. So these two books that I have, one of which I already owned, one of which I did purchase on a recommendation. So the first one that I'm going to be talking about is the Bromance Book Club, and this is by Lyssa Kay Adams, and I ended up giving this book 4 stars. Basically, what it follows is our main character is actually a man in this book. I think it's dual perspective, but it starts out in Gavin. I consider him our main character, his perspective. And basically he is a pro baseball player, and he finds out one night when his wife has an orgasm that she has been faking it for their entire relationship. And I think that really appealed to me because I find that kind of stuff very interesting. Like I've said before, am really open about sex and like learning things about your partners, and each partner is different. And that's always been something that I think has been, I don't know, just like I'm aware of, and I think that it was like a cool kind of take on the story, especially for the fact that it's told from Gavin's perspective. The other perspective is his wife, like I said, Thea. And basically what happens when he finds out that she has been faking on a very important win for his team that evening is when he finds out, and because of that he decides to move to the spare bedroom and stops talking to Thea, and eventually Thea says, you know what, I want a divorce, I need you to leave. And the reason why this is such a big deal is Gavin and Thea met and had a lot of passion in their relationship. Thea is very strong-willed, very much so like an activist, and does what she wants to do a little bit on the wild side, and that is what drew Gavin to her. So throughout the story, we get to kind of watch Gavin try to re-woo his wife, because he is bombarded one day by his teammates. He's basically like living in this hotel, and they show up and they're like, look dude, like we have this book club. Basically we read these romance novels because it kind of gives us insight into our wives, girlfriends, fiancés, whatever it might be, and we kind of try to adapt that in these situations. And everybody on the team has sort of gone through this, anyone who's in the book club. So you get to kind of see like these main characters and these side characters are just these big beefy like baseball players, and you get to kind of see them at their most tender, because it tends to be, I think, with like male ego, like the fact of being able to make a woman have an orgasm is like a big deal. And because Gavin is sort of wounded by that, it is like the top layer of sort of what's happening with him and Thea. It was really cool to kind of witness that from his perspective. And then in Thea's perspective, you know, when she got pregnant, they have twin daughters. When she got pregnant and they got married, people within her community, like the other baseball wives, were really cold towards her because they sort of assumed that maybe she did it to get clout and get money, and that was never Thea's like plan at all. And throughout the book, you get to learn about her trust issues with her parents and their divorce, and like becoming her mother and becoming very jaded, and then, you know, like not trusting Gavin because her own father was very absent in her life. And you get to see all of these things and the agreement between the two of them that Gavin is going to, whether she likes it or not, basically try to woo her again. And I thought it was a very cute story. Like I said, I ended up giving it 4 stars. I would have given it 5 stars, but it's definitely not a book that I'm like, oh my god, I would read it again. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed the story, the characters. I think everything, like even the supporting characters, were done really well. But like I said, to be a 5-star book, it's going to be a book that I want to read over and over and over again, that I don't think would lose anything. This is definitely not a story that I think once you've read it once, you'd want to go back and reread it, even though I do think that it has some pretty important lessons throughout the story that the average person can gain from it. If you are in a long-term relationship, if you are somebody who is from like more of a broken home, I think that this definitely has a lot of like candid conversations about those sort of things in it. And I definitely really appreciated it. And I'd be interested to see anything else that this author writes, because I think she writes characters very well. Now, the next book I read is testy. I'm gonna try to like not tiptoe around this a little bit, but definitely try to be patient in explaining this book. The book is Lessons in Corruption by Gianna Darling. I gave this book 4 stars. Now, if you get on Goodreads, you are going to see quite a few mixed reviews. This is a very polarizing book for a lot of people, but if you have read the book, you will have read like the epilogue sort of explanation from the author herself. So just to get into it, this follows our main character Cress, and she is, and also this is like pure, this is a smut book. Like we're talking like porn. Like my boyfriend was asking me about it and I was like, no, it's like a porn book basically. But it follows our main character Cress, and she is with an older gentleman that she is basically promised to from a very young age. Like it's a lot of, I would consider, grooming from her parents' point of view. Like her parents are best friends with this man. He's much older than her. She gets married when he's 18 and I think he's in like his 30s. And he knows her from a very young age. Now, he is a lawyer, more of a businessman, and he is, I wouldn't say cold toward Cress, but she has a lot of needs and desires that aren't being met from him. She wants a lot of passion, and it tends to be with her husband that it is a lot of routine. And the book starts out with her at a like grocery store, and they live in Canada, and there is like a biker gang that is in the town that they live in, and she locks eyes with a man across the parking lot and watches him interact with these people, and you can obviously tell that he's part of this gang, and she starts really kind of falling for him like immediately. And she goes home and divorces her husband because she's like, if I can feel these things for this other person, and I just realize everything that I'm missing with you, and I don't want my life to become this. So she does move out, and with the help of her brother buys her own fixer-upper within the town and becomes a teacher at this very prestigious school. At the same time, she does meet our secondary character, whose name is King, and they sort of start up a little bit of a romance. They go on a date. He's described as like super tall, really buff, like I'm talking like Thor buff, very, I don't know, like sexual, but also very like caring at the same time. Like through little bits of their interactions throughout their first date, you kind of get that vibe. So things get a little bit heated between them. They don't necessarily have sex or anything like that, but definitely like there is a strong connection. Come to find out that King is actually one of her students. Now, he is over the age of 18, but I wouldn't really consider this like a gray area here. He is still her student, and Cress does battle with that throughout the entirety of the story. Like whether he is of legal age, which if he was obviously not a student of hers, it would not be a huge deal. Now, this biker gang kind of adds to what I would consider the grayness of the line that we're drawing here, because they sort of run the town, but they are not a typical biker gang. Like obviously they do pretty they do like murder people. And throughout the story, there's like a couple of instances of like torture and stuff, but they tend to be very mild-mannered, do anything for their women kind of people. And when she is presented with the fact that King is her student, she tries to cut it off and is like, I am your teacher. This is very, morally wrong. Like, obviously I like you, but this cannot continue. I am in a seat of power. You are my student. And I really liked that that was sort of addressed. Now, where things I think get questionable for people, this is obviously a work of fiction, but this does happen quite often in real life, is the student-teacher inappropriate relationship. Now, like I said, King is above the age of 18. She did meet him before she realized that he was her student, but I think that a lot of people's qualms with this book is that it maybe should have ended in that way. Which the rest of the story is really just about her coming out of her shell and realizing who she is and who she wants to be and what is important to her and what is passion and romance and, real love. And that's just because, it is, I don't want to say a vapid romance kind of book, because I think it does offer a lot of dialogue, and I think it would be healthy maybe to like kind of explore that. But there is a point at the end of the book where the author wrote a bit of an author letter to the reader and explains that there were 2 people in her life that she was very close with that did have an inappropriate relationship like the one described in this story, and it completely ruined the lives of her friends and made it to where she could not speak to them and couldn't condone their actions. And then one day she had this story just come to life for her, and she felt the need to write it. And I think that there is sort of power in that, and people expressing themselves in a way that they feel comfortable and in a way that sort of tells the story that they have lived. And I definitely appreciate that for what it is worth. Now, like I said, I did enjoy this book, and I think that for me, the reason why I enjoyed it is King has very few short months left at this school, and they already have an established relationship, and I'm not trying to condone a student-teacher relationship at all. I think that it tends to be a more overplayed kind of aspect in like media, like, you know, Pretty Little Liars, there was an inappropriate relationship between a student and teacher. I've seen inappropriate relationships in my life between student and teacher, and it is something that I think is pretty, like I said, overplayed, but it was done in a way that didn't really bug me in this book for some reason. I mean, also it could have been because the smut was fucking fantastic. Like, if you're looking for some really good smut, this is one of the good ones, I think. Not that I read a whole lot, but so I can see why people don't like it, but just as an overall enjoyment factor, which is what I tend to rate these kinds of books on, I think that it was strong for me. Obviously, I enjoyed it. Take that for what you will, considering what type of book it is, but I thought it was fun, and I thought that there were some topics within it that were they make you think, especially with the student-teacher relationship, and like, is there a gray line there? And I think that it opens up a lot of discussion for people. But like I said, I can understand why people don't like this book. I can understand why that kind of relationship really sort of ruins the story for them. So I do empathize with people who sort of feel that way. But overall, I really liked it. Like I said, I gave it 4 stars. I took off a star because of the student-teacher relationship. It's sort of, you know, kind of got to me, and there isn't really a reason that I think that maybe I would want to reread this. I am considering continuing on with the series though. Apparently each book is written from one of a male in this world's perspective, like a different kind of dual perspective, like relationship wise. It's like one relationship, another relationship, like throughout the series, with a little bit of intermingling between the other characters from other books, which I really appreciate. And I know the next book is written from King's dad's perspective, which he's a mega hottie, and I would love to read that book. So we'll see if I get around to it. They're pretty cheap on Amazon if you're looking to get them, if you have any interest in reading a story like this. But like I said, I don't know if it's going to be everyone's cup of tea, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. But anyway, those are the books that I read the last week. I am currently reading Fixer Up, which I have heard some pretty negative reviews on, but we'll see what I think of it. I'm trying to avoid like anything and just see what kind of problematic stuff I'm able to take from it, or sort of what issues people had with it. But so far, I'm really liking it. I'm about 70 pages into it, so you should see a wrap up for that next week. But let me know down below the last book you read that made you think. Actually, that's what I would like to know. The last book that really made you think about life and boundaries and just anything that maybe you had a discussion with somebody else on. I like books that really make you think. So if you have a book like that, recommend it down below for me. But I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.